Welcome back to PlayStation Corner. My name is Alex and today we're taking a look at Call of Duty Vanguard on the PlayStation 5. It's the latest entry in the long-running series, but how does it play and is it going to be worth your time? Well, today we're going to be looking at single-player, multiplayer and zombies, so hit subscribe, join our growing PlayStation family and let's get started. Story first then, and the campaign gets something fully fleshed out, while multiplayer and zombies, it tries to add at least a little context to the actions you are taking. Now for the single player campaign, it's setting itself in World War II, and it tells the story of what is the first Special Forces unit in history. This also happens to be completely fictional for those wondering, and is this based on true events? It is not. In this universe though, shall we say, 4 soldiers, they come together from 4 of the Allied countries, that's Britain, the Soviet Union, Australia and the USA, and they're setting out to stop the Nazis. It's not a particularly smart story honestly, but it allows for a whole lot of missions across different locations thanks to what are flashbacks in each member's story. Overall, I enjoyed it as it embodies that over-the-top action adventure that would be praised no doubt in the world of Hollywood. Lots of set pieces though throughout, and an attempt at adding character to this unit's members, it for sure elevates it above what I would say are most Call of Duty stories in recent memory. Multiplayer then has a quick opening cutscene establishing we are now kind of on new missions of our own, and then zombies, we are working to deactivate recently discovered artifacts. So gameplay on this one, it's Call of Duty's tried and tested formula of shoot everything in sight. It's not a bad thing. While the series doesn't really change a whole lot from year to year, you definitely notice that polish, and that is true here. For me, immediately the gunplay feels tighter and the huge amount of bullets on screen is more intense than last year's Cold War effort. It also kicks things off the right way with a highlight mission set aboard a train swarming with enemies. These missions though, they're going to take you all over the place as well, and you'll be facing off against 9 in total. Alongside the opening train moment, another highlight is one of the few moments that includes vehicles. It throws you into air-based warfare, and it was a particularly strong level. I will say at this point though, we see another mission that tries to capture the magic of, all gillied up, and it just doesn't match for me. Stop living in the past with this series high and look ahead to new ideas instead. Gunplay then is snappy though, the weapon selection is solid as well. It has a whole lot of variety in its setup, from your sidearm to the standard rifles and machine guns to grenades to those weapons that can be mounted on walls and barriers around you. You will never run out of enemies to mow down either. One area on that note where I do think Cold War had the advantage though was its use of the DualSense controller, and specifically the responsive triggers. I was so impressed in that entry with how each weapon felt, but here it feels a little more underdeveloped and uniform from weapon to weapon. Outside of that, honestly, for gameplay, look, there's very little you wouldn't expect here. The environments are for sure more destructible this time around. That bleeds into multiplayer as well. It adds a dash of strategy to things, but this is kind of Hollywood World War, not realistic. So it largely results in large-scale warfare where you are essentially mostly invincible outside of dialing that difficulty up. Basically though, enemies are just going to storm towards you with no serious sign of intelligence. That said though, it is fun. The action is fast-paced, the large locations and number of enemies on screen was not lost on me, and the story twists and turns just enough that it kept me engaged. It's also just great as well to see the return of the World War II setting, something we haven't seen in some good time in the Call of Duty franchise. Zombies then will do next, and this is weak. One map, a small cutscene to open things up, and largely it's just by far the most disappointing start to Zombies mode we've seen in some time. It's just undercooked, and due to this, the lack of variety gets dull so quickly. The intention here is to add more content further down the line, but I was done with this after maybe a couple of rounds. For me, they shouldn't have included it at all in this state and rather patched it in the future, because now I fear I have a bad taste in my mouth to face the idea of, returning to check the content out in future. Many out there are also upset at the removal of round-based maps in general. Finally, multiplayer, which most of you will be coming here for, and this is far better than Cold War, a game I actually really did enjoy. It was a day one pickup for me, given the fact I just got a PlayStation 5, that probably helped it out. But this is just faster, there's a ton more options, and the destructible world adds a whole lot to it in the way I play. Yes, I still sprint around like a madman, sliding all over the place. Yes, players will be hopping all over the place as well. And also, yes, if you have the comms on with other players, you can expect the usual crowd. It's also, though, extremely difficult at this point just to jump in as a new player, because you are seeing here years of practice for many, and they are for sure efficient. While I still personally wish for more tactical battles, and they've kind of made an attempt this year, which I like to see, we'll get to that later, there is still something extremely gratifying in its ridiculous pacing. I think the highlight for multiplayer, though, it's just the sheer number of options here, with 8 modes from free to war to team deathmatch to domination. You're capturing a specific point in that one, to my personal favourite, which is kill confirmed. This tasks you with not only killing your enemy, but also then picking up their dog tags as well, which asks for kind of a little bit of teamwork, especially if you're playing something like Sniper. That said, though, I did find in that mode most of the time I was picking up dog tags, everyone else was simply gunning anyone in sight down and running the opposite direction. Finally then, there's also a new mode as well called Champion Hill, which is solid. Squads of duos or trios, they fight in a round robin style to be the last team standing. To round this out then, we get hardcore variations, of course dialing up that challenge, and then what they're calling pacing. Pacing actually comes in 3 options. You've got tactical, assault and blitz, and essentially this determines how many players will be in the game, making for something at times, occasionally, very occasionally, something that's a little slower paced and strategic. Finally, for multiplayer then, of course, expect leveling up, a battle pass that is up for purchase, I did not go for it myself, and weapon leveling and class setup. The more you win though, the more you unlock, and that weapon will for sure at that point do some damage. If you want to level up quickly as well, my personal opinion is focus on multiplayer specific challenges that come with some healthy XP boosts. Perks, of course, are then returning to the multiplayer as well. My personal favourite in Vanguard, a flamethrower that I had a blast with. And yeah, the main issue I have with multiplayer right now is because the gameplay is solid, it's absolutely there, but higher player counts often leads to brutal spawn points where you die instantly, and I had a few rounds where I was dying within seconds because I was spawning literally in a crowd of enemies. They definitely need to work that out. Overall for gameplay though, it's not going to change your mind about the Call of Duty formula, but it is for sure a nice step up from Cold War. The story is, I'd say, on par. It's a 5 to 6 hour runtime, it's high action but very little brain power required, but multiplayer is coming in feature rich. The letdown zombie mode do not come here for that, it's just lacking and more than a little disappointing compared to past iterations. Graphically then, I thought for the most part it was stunning. What surprised me was the opening levels mostly take place at night, meaning it's extremely dark, so you can't really see a ton of detail, but it's a fantastic example of what the lighting engine can do here. Some moments I actually found it extremely difficult to spot my enemies, and that's actually not a negative on the game, actually rather a positive, as it leans into this extreme realism in some of its environmental design across the board. As always as well, the small amount of destructibles make for something that feels alive, and Call of Duty does not hold back on its set pieces, and some of these explosions will absolutely fill your screen. Cutscenes then are a particular highlight of the game as well, some seriously impressive animation on offer. Issues wise on the PS5, we get to face some large locations. Pop-in is here, though I noticed on a few occasions when the world was a little bit more open, you'll see, that final level of detail in the textures popping into focus. Outside of that then, the multiplayer character models, they feel a little weak at times, and there's doesn't seem to be a huge amount of variety. I've seen the same ones over and over again. Also, some of the animations on enemies, they can get a little more than weird, both online and off, with a few occasions that enemies, they just kind of flew entirely off the screen. Audio finally, it's decent, really good voice acting first off, really impressed with that. Then the weapons sound heavy and varied, and explosions, they are particularly impressive, filling the sound field. A particular highlight is running from a bombing. It's of course a complete set piece, but the sound here adds some real tension to it all. Music then is for the most part kind of typical for the genre, but it captures the spirit of that, World War Hollywood vibe, kind of high pace, high intensity. It hits all the right notes. Another final highlight then, some cheesy but entertaining voice work in zombies, even if the mode itself is lacking. So the final verdict in Call of Duty Vanguard, it's better than Cold War. The gunplay feels better, it feels heavier, and in multiplayer it's just feature rich in comparison to what we got with Cold War back at release. Story wise, I'd call it comparable, another 5 hours of, intense set piece action, and yeah, it's going to demand very little of you honestly, but you're going to walk away still feeling like a badass. The final area, zombies though, is the game's weakness currently in this state. I think it would have been better just removed entirely with a roadmap to a later release down the line instead. That all said though, you like Call of Duty, you're going to like this, and if you don't like Call of Duty, it's doing very little here to, I guess, persuade you. As with every year though, they know exactly what they need to do to please their core audience, and I wish they would get still a little bold and braver with their ideas, because the teams working on these games, they are clearly extremely talented. Would I recommend this game for story only though? Definitely not. Nor would I recommend it for zombies at all. You need to be coming here for some multiplayer goodness. If you are, I doubt you will be disappointed. A good 7 out of 10 from me then, but if this gets a ton of updates, it could turn into a highlight entry in the series. Will you be adding this one to the library then? Have you already? Let me know in the comments down below, and with that luck, hit subscribe, join our growing PlayStation family, and I'll see you all on the next video. Thanks everyone.